Kinetic sand stays together in a way that regular beach sand does not. The word kinetic means togetherness due to movement and energy. Kinetic sand is called this because of its ability to stick together when force is applied. So for why this specific recipe creates kinetic sand, it's because when a liquid is added to cornstarch, that cornstarch becomes thicker, and adding the dish soap and the water to the cornstarch and the sand mixture creates a thicker and heavier sand. The idea is that if a correct amount of wet ingredients are added, then the sand and cornstarch mixture will stay dry enough to not stick to your hands and yet wet enough to stick together to itself. Kinetic sand at its most basic is simply regular sand mixed with a polymer. So the polymer is what gives the sand that stretchy property or the togetherness quality. Polymers are molecules made up of long chains of repeated units. So store-bought kinetic sand is made with a silicone polymer called dimethicone, which is actually found in a bunch of beauty products that you'll find in drugstores. So dimethicone is silicone oil. And silicone oils have really interesting properties in that they can be liquids that flow freely or semi-solids that flow slowly in the absence of pressure that also act like rubbery solids under stress or with applied pressure. This property is called viscoelasticity. So that viscoelasticity or viscosity is the ability of the substance to flow freely, and the viscoelasticity of dimethicone increases under stress or when or force. So when pressure is added, it's solid, and when pressure is released, it's liquid or semi-solid. The degree of viscoelasticity depends on the length of the polymer trains. So longer polymer trains are going to hold their shape better than shorter polymer trains. The polymer chains within the dimethicone make the sand pieces stick together so that they can be molded and manipulated. Kind of an example of this, there's a non-Newtonian fluid called oobleck, which can be both liquid and solid depending on the amount of pressure that it's applied. So the cornstarch and soap in this specific kinetic sand recipe allow the sand to act in a similar manner as the oobleck. So in kinetic sand, the polymer chains in the silicone oil for the store-bought sand make the sand particles stick together and only to each other. So the sand particles are sticking to the sand particles. So that the sand doesn't stick to other surfaces, which is why kinetic sand isn't super messy and easy to clean up and a really popular sensory kind of toy and tool for children. So with all of that background info, we're now going to try to make some kinetic sand using this blue colored play sand, cornstarch, dish soap, which is in my fridge, not my fridge, it's in my kitchen, it's not in my fridge, and water. So for this specific recipe, I'm using 1 cup of play sand, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of dish soap, and 1 tablespoon of water. So here goes. So while I was reading all kind of about different ways to make kinetic sand, I was constantly reading that you should combine the wet ingredients together and the dry ingredients together like separately, and then mix them together to get like the best mixture. So that's what we're going to do. So in this container, I have 1 cup of the blue colored play sand, and then, I don't know if you can like see the white, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. So I'm going to mix that together first, because they said that if you mix the dry ingredients together first and separately, it would be easier to kind of get the wet ingredients and to make the kinetic sand kinetic. So that's what we're going to do. Taking a little longer than I expected. Hold on. It's going, it's going. We're going to keep mixing that. Just want to get it mixed well enough that it's like combined. So, trying to get all the cornstarch lumps out. And then I already mixed my 2 tablespoons of water or 2 tablespoons of dish soap and 1 tablespoon of water. So I'm going to add that in. So that's right here. You can see it's kind of bubbly. So I'm going to add that in to my sand and cornstarch, and then I'm going to mix that. A lot of people were saying that it was like it would dry out really quickly, so you just had to kind of add like a little more water. This one does look like that's going to be the issue because all of the sand is not like mixing with the water and cornstarch, but it does seem to be sticking together and definitely has a different texture than it did when I started messing with just the sand. It's definitely sticking to each other. My dog is curious what I'm doing. Hi, buddy. It's fine. You see it? It's kinetic sand. You can't eat it. Okay, actually I lied. I think it is enough water to be like manipulated and molded. Oh, let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna get it out. Okay, so I actually think it's a little too wet because it's definitely sticking to my hand a little bit. Oh, my dog's eating sand. But it's definitely like can't bring it up super well because it's a little wet, but you can see that it's like holding its shape better and is definitely like acting differently than it would with regular sand. This is not a treat. Stop it. Stop. So yeah, I think to get the best mixture I'd probably want to add a little more sand because it's just like a little wet, so it's kind of like sticking on my hands, but not as badly as it would if it were just regular sand. And it's definitely sticking to each other, which was the whole point of adding the liquid to the mixture. So I would say that I made kinetic sand. Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Oh, there's sand all over my computer.